Chioma trusted her best friend, Ngozi, but Ngozi took her husband. She was the only woman Chioma ever trusted with the darkest parts of herself. The miscarriages, the crying at 3 a.m., the loneliness inside a marriage that looked perfect from the outside. And while Chioma was pouring her heart out, Ngozi was pouring herself into Chioma's husband. If you've ever trusted someone completely and lived to regret every single word, stay right here, because this story will shake something deep inside you. And before we go any further, if you are new here, hit that subscribe button, because the stories we tell on this channel, they will follow you long after you close your YouTube app. Let's get into the story. Chioma and Ngozi met in secondary school, Plateau State. Two girls from different families, different backgrounds, but somehow the same soul. Ngozi was the loud one, the girl who laughed from her belly and walked into a room like she already owned it. Chioma was quieter, careful, the kind of girl who thought before she spoke, who measured her words like they cost something. But they clicked in the way that only young girls can, completely, recklessly, without warning. They shared food from the same plate, finished each other's sentences, cried at the same movies. By the time they finished secondary school, Ngozi knew things about Chioma that Chioma had never told her own mother, and Chioma knew the same about Ngozi. That kind of friendship is rare. That kind of friendship is also dangerous, because when someone knows everything about you, every wound, every weakness, every door you've left unlocked inside yourself, they have power, real power, the kind that can heal you or destroy you. For years, it only healed. Chioma got married first. She met Emeka at a friend's birthday party in Lagos. He was Igbo, well-spoken, worked in finance, had the kind of smile that made women forget common sense. He wasn't perfect, nobody is, but he was solid, dependable. He opened doors, he called when he said he would call. He made Chioma feel chosen, which, after years of the wrong men choosing wrong things, felt like a miracle. The wedding was small. Ngozi was the chief bridesmaid. She danced so hard at the reception that she lost one shoe and finished the night barefoot, laughing until her mascara ran rivers down her face. Chioma stood watching her and felt a wave of love so strong it almost knocked her over. This was her person, her ride or die, her sister in every way that mattered. Life moved. Emeka and Chioma settled into their home in Lekki. He worked long hours. She built a small catering business from their kitchen. Small chops, jollof rice, the kind of food that made people call back. They weren't rich, but they were comfortable. They were building something. Then the miscarriages started. The first one came at 11 weeks. Chioma didn't tell many people. She and Emeka grieved quietly, the way Nigerians are taught to grieve. Privately, with prayer, with the understanding that some things you simply don't display. But Emeka struggled to talk about it. Not because he didn't care. He cared deeply. But he was the kind of man who processed pain by going silent, by burying himself in work, by pretending that if he didn't speak a thing, it would eventually dissolve. It didn't dissolve for Chioma. It lived inside her. So she called Ngozi. Ngozi drove to Lekki that same evening. She brought pepper soup and chin-chin, and she sat on the floor of Chioma's living room and she listened. Not the kind of listening where someone is waiting for their turn to speak. Real listening. The kind where you can feel the other person's pain moving through you like something physical. Chioma told her everything. The blood she found on a Tuesday morning, the way her body felt hollow afterwards, the way Emeka had held her for 10 minutes and then gone to watch football because he didn't know what else to do, the way sometimes she stood in the bathroom at night and pressed both hands to her own stomach and tried to remember what hope felt like. Ngozi sat with all of it. She didn't say, at least. She didn't say, God has a plan. She just sat there in the full weight of it and let Chioma be broken without rushing her back to wholeness. That night, Chioma said something she would later replay 1,000 times. She said, Emeka is a good man, but he doesn't know how to hold me the way I need to be held. And sometimes I feel so alone inside this marriage, Ngozi, so completely alone. Ngozi nodded, squeezed her hand, said, I know, I see it. She saw it. That was the problem. She saw everything. The second miscarriage came 1.5 years later. This time, further along, 14 weeks. This time, Chioma had already told a few people. Her mother-in-law had started calling. Emeka's aunties had begun their whispered conversations that stopped whenever Chioma walked into a room. The pressure was mounting in the way that pressure mounts in Nigerian families, silently, relentlessly, like water rising from the ground. Chioma called Ngozi again. Ngozi came again. More pepper soup, more late nights, more conversation. But something had shifted though. Chioma couldn't name it yet. Ngozi had started asking questions that felt slightly different. Not questions about how Chioma was coping, but questions about Emeka, about his schedule, about his habits, about how he spent his evenings when Chioma went to bed early from exhaustion. Chioma answered freely. Why wouldn't she? This was Ngozi. This was her person. He goes to the gym on Wednesday and Friday nights. He likes to unwind there after work. Sometimes he comes back around 10. I'm usually asleep by then. Does he have work friends you've never met? Some. His office is big. I don't know everyone. Does he seem distant lately? A little, but you know how men are when they are stressed. Ngozi nodded. But Chioma would later understand that Ngozi was not asking those questions for Chioma's sake. She was asking them for herself. Now, before this story goes where it's going, I need you to subscribe if you haven't already. Because what I'm about to tell you, this is where everything turns. This is where you will start to see the whole picture, and you don't want to miss this. It started, as these things always do, with something small. Chioma noticed that Ngozi's WhatsApp status had a new photo. Nothing dramatic, just Ngozi in a restaurant, laughing, a plate of food in front of her. But the restaurant looked familiar. Not because Chioma had been there, because Emeka had mentioned it once, a new place in VI that his colleague had taken him to. He'd come home talking about the pepper stick. Chioma didn't think much of it. Lagos is not a big city in that way. People run into each other everywhere. She scrolled past the photo and went back to her catering orders. Then, a month later, she found the receipt. It was in the pocket of Emeka's trousers. She was sorting the laundry. A receipt from a hotel in Ikoyi. 1 night, 2 guests. The date was a Saturday when Emeka had told her he was attending a professional development seminar in Abuja. She had even packed his bag. She stood in their bedroom for a long time with the receipt in her hand. Her mind moved slowly, the way minds move when they are trying to protect you from something you are not yet ready to see. She put the receipt back in the pocket, finished the laundry, made dinner, waited. She didn't confront Emeka immediately. She is not that kind of woman. She is the kind who gathers information first, who builds a case quietly, who makes sure she knows the full truth before she opens her mouth. It's the same quality that made her good at business and terrible at conflict. She started paying attention. Over the next 6 weeks, she noticed things. Emeka's phone face down on the table when she was nearby, a new habit of showers immediately after coming home from the gym. An aftershave she didn't recognize, something warmer, more expensive than what he usually wore. Once, when she picked up his phone to show him a video, she saw a name saved as Dele Office, and her blood ran cold because she had never heard him mention anyone named Dele, and the preview of the message on the lock screen said simply, "I miss you already." She put the phone down, said nothing, kept watching. She also, during this time, started to notice that Ngozi was less available. The woman who used to call 3 times a week now sometimes went 10 days without contact. When they did talk, Ngozi was breezy, almost too breezy, the kind of breezy that people perform when they are working hard to seem normal. She filed this away. She didn't know yet what to do with it. Then came the night that broke everything open. Chioma had a catering event, a birthday party in Surulere. She was supposed to be back by 9, but finished cleanup by 7:30 and decided to head home early. She didn't text Emeka because she wanted to surprise him. Maybe order food together, maybe finally have one of those quiet evenings they used to have before everything got complicated. She drove into their estate, pulled into the compound, and there, parked beside Emeka's car, was a car she knew as well as she knew her own face. Ngozi's car. The white Honda she had helped Ngozi pick out 3 years ago. The one with the crack in the right side mirror that Ngozi kept saying she would fix but never did. She stood in her car for several minutes, the engine running, the air conditioning blowing cold against her face. Her whole body had gone very still. She told herself there was an explanation. Ngozi had stopped by unexpectedly, Emeka had let her in, they were waiting for Chioma together, that was it, that had to be it. She went inside. The living room was empty. The TV was on, volume low, something playing that neither of them was watching. 2 glasses on the center table, one with wine, one with something else. A throw pillow on the floor that shouldn't have been on the floor. She walked further into the house. She had them before she reached the bedroom. She didn't open the door. She didn't need to. She stood in that hallway, the same hallway where she had hung the family photos, and she listened to the sound of her marriage collapsing with the person she trusted most inside it. She walked back to the living room. She sat down on the couch. She picked up Ngozi's handbag, which was sitting on the armchair the way it always sat when Ngozi visited, so casually, so normally, like this was just another visit, and she placed it on the floor. Then she waited. They didn't hear her come in. When they finally emerged, Ngozi first straightening her dress, Emeka behind, him buttoning his shirt, they walked into the living room and found Chioma sitting in the armchair with her hands folded in her lap and her face completely calm. The silence that followed was the loudest thing Chioma had ever heard. Ngozi's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Emeka's face went the color of ash. He said her name, just her name, Chioma. And she looked at him the way you look at something you are trying to memorize before it's gone forever. She stood up. She picked up her keys. She said, "I need you both to leave my house. Not our house, my house." Emeka started talking. The words came fast and tangled. Explanations, apologies, fragments of sentences that didn't finish. Ngozi was crying. Not the kind of crying that asks for forgiveness, the panicked kind, the kind that is mostly about self-preservation, about the terror of being seen for exactly what you are. Chioma said very quietly, "I am not going to shout. I am not going to beg. I am not going to make this a scene. I want you both to take your things and leave this house tonight." They left. She locked the door, turned off the lights, sat back down in the armchair, and then she wept so deeply, so completely, that afterwards she felt like something had been physically removed from inside her body. She didn't call anyone that night, not her mother, not any friend. She sat alone in the house she had decorated herself, the house where she had imagined raising children, the house that had absorbed years of her life and her hope and her private grief. And she let herself feel every single thing without running from it any. That, more than anything, is the thing you need to understand about Chioma. She did not flinch. She looked directly at the worst thing that had ever happened to her, and she did not flinch. In the days that followed, the full architecture of the betrayal became clear. Emeka, when he finally got to speak to her, she gave him that one conversation, composed, seated across from each other at the dining table like 2 strangers at a meeting. Emeka told her it had been going on for 4 months. It started, he said, at a low point, after the second miscarriage, when he felt helpless and didn't know how to reach her, and Ngozi had called him directly to ask how he was coping. One conversation led to another.
He knew it was wrong. He said that repeatedly. He knew it was wrong. Chioma asked him one question only. Did she ever tell him the things I told her? About us, about me? Emeka looked at the table. That was her answer.
Ngozi had used every confession Chioma ever made as a map. She had known Emeka was lonely because Chioma told her. She had known the exact hours he was available because Chioma told her. She had known every crack in the marriage because Chioma, trusting her completely, had traced each crack with her own finger and held it up to the light. The betrayal was not just Emeka in a hotel room. The betrayal was 3 years of therapy sessions disguised as friendship. It was every 3 a.m. phone call, every pepper soup, every I see you, I hear you, I'm here. All of it weaponized. All of it used against the very person who offered it in love. Chioma asked Emeka to leave. He did. She filed for divorce 2 months later, and then she moved out of their matrimonial home, the Lekki flat, and rented a place in Magodo that was completely hers. But here is the part of this story that most people don't know, because here is where it gets complicated. Ngozi called Chioma exactly once, 6 weeks after that night. She called at noon on a Tuesday, and Chioma, to her own surprise, picked up. Ngozi was crying before she even said hello. She said she was sorry. She said she had been wrong. She said there was no excuse. She said she had ended things with Emeka because she couldn't live with herself. She said she had lost her best friend and nothing was worth that. She said she missed Chioma every single day. Chioma listened to all of it without speaking. When Ngozi finished, there was a long silence, and then Chioma said this. You knew everything about my pain. You sat with me in every dark room I ever entered, and you chose to use that to take from me instead of protect me. I don't hate you, Ngozi. I genuinely do not have the energy for hate, but I want you to understand something. The person you knew, the one who trusted you like that, she doesn't exist anymore. You didn't just break my marriage. You broke something inside me that I will spend years rebuilding. And I am choosing from today to rebuild it without you. She hung up. She never spoke to Ngozi again. Now, here is what happened after. Chioma's catering business, which she had been running out of her personal distress, suddenly became the thing that saved her. With Emeka gone and the house quiet, and the weight of trying to hold a broken marriage together lifted from her shoulders, she had energy she hadn't had in years. Real energy, clear-headed, purposeful energy. She hired an assistant. She took on corporate contracts. She catered 3 major events in 1 quarter and used the money to rent a proper commercial kitchen space in Aja. By the end of that year, the business had tripled its revenue. She went to therapy, real therapy, weekly, with a woman who did not let her minimize or deflect. It was hard. There were sessions where she sat in silence for 20 minutes because she didn't know how to begin. There were sessions where she laughed at herself for how long she had been strong on behalf of everyone around her while quietly bleeding on the inside. She learned the difference between being private about pain and hiding pain in ways that isolate you. She learned to share her suffering with only one person. Binding herself completely to one soul made her catastrophically vulnerable. She learned to build a wider net. She made new friends, slowly, carefully, with more discernment than she had had at 19 when she had handed Ngozi the full content of herself like it was nothing. And Emeka? Emeka moved in with Ngozi 3 weeks after Chioma moved out of the Lekki flat. The relationship lasted 7 months. Then it ended.
The way those kinds of relationships usually end, in the same fire they were built in. He sent Chioma a long message on a Sunday afternoon, 8 months after the divorce was finalized. He said he understood now, fully, what he had lost. He said he was in therapy too. He said he was not asking for anything, not forgiveness, not a second chance, just that he knew he was sorry in a way that had no agenda attached to it. Chioma read the message. She did not reply. Not because she was angry, as she had moved through anger into something quieter and more permanent, but because there was simply nothing left to see. Some doors, when they close, are not meant to be reopened. They are meant to teach you, permanently, the difference between a shelter and a trap. 2 years after the night she came home to find that car in her driveway, Chioma stood in front of 50 women at a catering industry summit in Lagos. She was the keynote speaker. She had been asked to talk about building a business through adversity. She stood at that podium in a deep burgundy dress she had bought herself, with no one to impress and nothing to prove. And she spoke honestly about losing almost everything and building something better from the ruins. She didn't mention Emeka by name. She didn't mention Ngozi, but she said something that made the room go completely still. She said, "I learned that the most dangerous thing about pain is not the pain itself. It is who you choose to share it with, because not everyone who holds your story is protecting it. Some people are studying it. Choose wisely who gets to see your wounds, not because you should hide them, but because healing is sacred and it belongs to you." The room was quiet for 3 full seconds. Then the applause started. There is one more thing. Chioma's third pregnancy, yes, you heard that right, came 2 years after the divorce. She had been dating quietly, privately, a man she met through a mutual colleague, a man named Chukwudi, who was not dramatic or exciting in the way that Emeka had once seemed exciting. He was steady. He listened not because he was building information, but because he was genuinely interested. He did not panic in the face of her grief. He did not go silent. He asked questions. He stayed. When she lost the third pregnancy at 9 weeks, he sat on the bathroom floor with her and held her and said nothing for a long time. And then he said, "We will try again. And if we cannot, we will find another way. But whatever happens, I am not going anywhere." She looked at him, really looked at him, and something cracked open inside her. Not in the way things crack when they break, but in the way they crack when they finally let the light in. Their daughter was born 18 months later. They named her Chisom, meaning God is with me. And on the day she was born, Chioma held her against her chest and felt something complete inside herself. Not the ending of a chapter, not the beginning of another, just a moment, whole and real and entirely her own, that no one could take from her. Chioma trusted the wrong person with her pain, but she never stopped trusting herself. And in the end, that was enough. Not every wound leaves you weaker. Some wounds, if you refuse to let them define you, will carve space for something larger than what was there before. That is the story of Chioma. If this story moved something in you, if it made you think of someone or of yourself, or of a moment when you trusted someone who shouldn't have been trusted, share it. Because there are people waiting right now who need to hear that they can survive the worst betrayal and still build something beautiful. Subscribe to this channel. Not because of an algorithm, but because we tell stories here that are worth sitting with. Stories about real people, real pain, real survival. And you don't want to miss what comes next.